Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Stroman. Nordstrom.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And now is the time for adoption of the agenda. Have a motion to adopt by Councilman Nordstrom, a second by Councilman Stroman, and we will go to roll call vote.
Evans. Armstrong.
Aye.
Roberts.
Aye.
Stroman. Nordstrom.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Now is time for general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issue, not limited to items on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. I don't believe I have any general public comment, so I will open and close it. I will move on to consent items, items 1 through 13. I will open public comment, and I'm not sure if I have anybody on 1 through 13 because only a couple of the people put which item they are speaking on. So I must not, nobody's jumping up and down. So I will close public comment and we'll move on to items 1 through 13. And I'll look to see if anybody wants to pull anything, 1 through 13. If no one does, I'll look for a motion.
So moved.
So we have a motion by Councilwoman Armstrong, a second by Councilman Evans, and we'll go to a roll call vote.
Evans. Armstrong.
Aye.
Roberts.
Aye.
Stroman. Nordstrom.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to non-consent items, items 14 through 16. I will open public comment, and we have 3 speaker request forms. Let's see. We have, looks like 1 for item 15, 1 for 16, and 1 for 14, I think. Bob, I think you wanted to be on 16. Okay. So why don't we take item number, let's see, item 15 first. So Shane Geidel, if you give us your name and your address.
Shane Geidel, 234. Shane Geidel, 23410 Bradsky Road. I'm looking to build 1 more dwelling on Bradsky Road. My property is in the 1 mile boundary instead of county, so we gotta go through that way. From my property to Highway 44, the access there, I just counted there's 17 mailboxes, and it's a ½ mile past me to any more dwellings. I'm not trying to split it up, make a development. I just want to make a 28-acre chunk for my personal house to be on, so that kind of what I'm looking for instead of what I got, and more handicap accessible or accessible house and shop. So that's the goal.
Thank you very much. I'm sure when we get to the item, we're going to have more questions for you. So once we get to the item, we'll call you up if we have questions.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 16. So either Kyle or Bob, whoever wants to speak first.
Kyle Trelaw with KTM Design Solutions here in Rapid City. I'll just give some quick background information. I'm here to speak about the water main length exception for property east of Elkvale here in Rapid City. I'm a little rusty. I haven't been up here for a while.
You were never that good anyway, Kyle. You know I'm kidding you.
All right, I will see. Go. Actually. Ooh. There we go, document camera. All right, so we're talking about what is essentially the first phase for master planned area out just east of Elkville, kind of along the future Anamosa Street corridor that'll extend east from Elkville Road. This is the master plan as it's drawn up right now. We're specifically looking at a small area here that is, let's see, right here. So the applicant has currently requested and has construction plans approved to plat 4 lots extending DeGee Street to the north about 200 feet and Neal Street to the north about 200 feet. This request is to install the water main, extend that to the northern terminus of both of these 200 feet of water main onto this dead end water mains on both sides. So what's generally important here is that we have from down here, I forget which street that is Bernice Street. We've got about 600 feet of water main that extends to the southern side of his property, and then he's requesting to add another 200 feet on and waive the requirement to loop it with this phase. The current loop that was proposed would have been about 850 feet. It would have run behind these future lots. He's asking to waive that in lieu of a future loop that'll extend another 150 feet to the north and run an Anamosa Street. So essentially, he's looking to not have to construct a 800 foot of water main for 800 foot of water main that'll be required in the future. We ran updated fire flow tests in June at the end of both DeGeest and Neal Streets, and we determined that we have adequate fire flow at the end of both of these streets. They're MDR lots, which will also, per what would be developed out here, require sprinkler systems. So we've got adequate fire protection. We're extending the street about 200 feet, and we're asking to not have to install that 800 foot loop, not forever, but just until we build Anamosa Street, where we can put that loop, we can install the water main, and then we can also use that to branch off and serve other properties with that low water level. So it's better suited in that Anamosa Street corridor. Obviously, we'll be here for questions when we get to the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. And you did a good job.
Thank you.
Bob, did you want to speak to?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak, ladies and gentlemen.
Please
Kyle
give
did
us your name just for the record.
Bob Quinn,
Thank you.
and this is with the Westwind Development. So we put a great deal of effort and time into getting the master plan for about 240 acres, as was showing up on the screen a minute ago. And this line, that loop line, is only temporary. So when Anamosa gets built, then the loop will be terminated and abandoned. So for the best sake of my project, I think it would be better just to wait and put the loop into the Anamosa, where it'll be permanent, incorporated into the whole development.
Thank you very much. And when we get to this item, I'm sure people will have questions. So I will close public comment, and we will move on to item 14, appeal by Lloyd Companies of a stipulation to extend public water main as part of an exception request. Approval continued from September 1st, 2020 meeting. Staff recommends deny, but this is going to be, I believe, removed by the applicant. Dale?
My apologies. Yes, the applicant has requested the withdrawal of this appeal. So if the motion could be to acknowledge the applicant's withdrawal of this appeal would be appropriate.
Thank you, and I look for a motion.
So moved. Second. So moved.
Got a motion by Councilwoman Armstrong, a second by Councilman Stroman, and we will go to a roll call vote.
Stroman. Aye. Roberts.
Aye.
Armstrong.
Aye.
Nordstrom.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 15, a request from Renner and Associates LLC for an exception to allow more than 40 dwelling units with one point of access via Bradsky Road per section 2.6 of the Infrastructure Design Criteria Manual, IDCM. A single access can only serve 40 dwelling units unless an exception is approved by City Council. Do I have anybody that would like to speak on this item? Mr. Stroman, you have the floor.
Thank you. I would just like to ask Dale Tech what we have. Is it just one new building going on there or is there more than one that's? Are we going to be at 40 plus one, or are we going to be at 40 plus several?
There was a letter attached. Brittany Molitor, the county planning director, I believe she indicated there are currently 60 out there, so this would take it from 60 to 61, so they're currently 50% over. Once again, Bradsky Road is under the jurisdiction of Pennington County. Pennington County does not recommend approval of this item. That's really the background information that I have today to share with you.
Well, that's what I thought. I had read that too, that we were quite a bit more than the 40 units, and I think for that reason we need to stick with our design criteria model that says a single access can only serve 40 dwelling units unless there's an exception. And I think if there's that many units out there that are planned, I would think that we would deny the variance. And that would be my motion if I can make the motion now.
Absolutely. You can make any motion you want to make.
Okay, or affirm the denial.
I'll second it.
Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have anybody else that would like to speak? I'd like a little leeway. I'd like to speak on this and maybe ask Mr. Geidel a question or two, if you don't mind. Well, if you voted against me speaking, I probably wouldn't. I shouldn't give you the option. It's not wrong. Thank you. Mr. Geidel, can I ask you a question? Out of these 60 units that are out there, did you develop any of those 60 units?
None.
Okay. And if there was a second access put in, where would it be? Do you know how far would it be? What would roughly be the cost of it?
I know there was a development called Bromegrass that's right before me that was supposed to put the second access into across Merlin Stromer. That's who put the development in. And it was supposed to go over to the airport road, new bridge there. Since that has happened, he has become seriously ill, and I think he's even in a home now. But I know when they were doing the bridge, there was quite a turmoil about that, or the bridge failed before they repaired it. That was the access that they had to use, was go across that bridge and go through part of his pasture on the section line. And at the time that we thought that was gonna kind of push it through, but they repaired the bridge instead, widened the road, brought everything up to code that way, and didn't ever forward that access. The other access would have to be several miles past my house onto Antelope Creek Road, on a section line, I would assume. It's where I'm at, there's a creek on both ends of the or both sides of me. Well, Bradsky Road is the only section line. There's not really any other applicable access onto Highway 44 or any other road.
Thank you very much. I was curious about that because I kind of have an issue with this. I mean, if we have 60 out there already and we're not going to allow one more, and the gentleman that we're not allowing one more for would have a huge cost to even try to put in a road to get a second access, we are really doing a disservice to one of our constituents. There's a lot of people that got a pass on this, it looks like, at one point or another. You know, and you're on, basically, you're on the very end of Bradsky Road down there, correct?
I'm within 3/4 of a mile of Highway 44. Other than that little brome grass subdivision that's a half mile off, there's 4 residents between me and Highway 44. I'm right down and close to the end, yes.
Okay. You know, I just have a little bit of heartburn about this, where we're going to force, you know, the design criteria manual now, but we didn't do it 20 residences ago. And now the fact that it's going to be so difficult and expensive for you to put in that second access, we're basically denying you the right to use your property the way you want to. So anyway, I am going to vote no against this, and I'll let Mr. Evans have the floor now.
Well, like you said, somewhere along the line, somebody approved this. I don't know when. I don't think it's been since I've been on here. And this is another case of we're going back and putting a Band-Aid over a big wound that somebody said, it's just a little scrape. And then somebody else is expected to pay the price because we don't have any contractual obligation from people to do what they said they were going to do, and they promised to do it. Oh, we'll do it next time, or next time we build something. So today, I'm going to vote to deny this, go with the motion, but I'm not going to say we're going to forever deny you the chance to build. I don't know enough about it right now to say I could go against the wishes of our design department over here, because they certainly know more about it than I do. So I'm going to vote to approve or to not allow this variance, but I'm going to tell you to come back perhaps after I personally have a chance to explore it more and find out what went on, because we don't want to, again, trap you without the ability to use your property. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nordstrom? No? Laura, do you have anything you want to say?
No, thank you.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor to
Denial.
uphold the denial. The motion was made by Mr. Stroman, seconded by Laura Armstrong,
Correct.
Councilwoman Armstrong. And we
Correct.
will go to a roll call vote.
Just to be sure.
Yes. Yes.
No.
What?
We good?
Go ahead, we're good.
Evans? Stroman? Roberts?
No.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Nordstrom?
Aye.
Motion carries with one
Thank
no.
you very much. We'll move on to item 16, appeal by KTM Design Solutions Incorporated of an exception denial to allow dead-end water mains longer than 600 feet but less than 1,200 feet in Neal Street and DeGeese Street. And the staff recommendation is to deny. Laura, do you have anything you want to say?
No.
Anyone else? Mr. Nordstrom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm somewhat confused on this project a little bit. So I believe Mr. Quinn, you mentioned something that this line would, if we were required to be put in, it would be abandoned and not used in the future. Am I understanding your comment correctly?
Yeah, this is Bob Quinn. Yes, that's what I understand in the drawings, that it would be used temporarily until Anamosa is built, and then the water loop would loop through Anamosa. and this line would be abandoned.
Thank you. I need some clarification on this. I'm not sure I totally understand the whole project yet, but if I can go to Mr. Tech for a little bit more clarification on, just help me out understanding the loop versus the non-loop and the abandoning the line.
The design report that was submitted back in January for this project identified that there is not adequate fire flow on Neal Street, therefore a loop is necessary to get the appropriate fire flows, in addition to meet the criteria that we have for looping as well. That's just as important as the criteria for fire flows. This property is at the very edge of a pressure boundary, which means you go not too much further north, there won't be enough pressure in this system to adequately serve it, regardless of what sizes of pipes or what type of looping it is. Anamosa Street, as was shown in their master plan that they had up on the screen there, the property that will take access off of Anamosa Street will require the higher pressure. So to put a loop in Anamosa Street for this pressure zone does not make any sense. It could be done, but the most appropriate place to loop is right where it's shown as the engineer of record designed it. In addition to that, the design calculations, as I said, do not show that there's enough fire flow on Neal Street. The fire flows that the fire department ran in June are under different conditions than what our criteria is. So to say that the fire flows that the fire department checked at that day and time meet the same as our criteria is not true. They're two different things. We haven't seen anything submitted by a registered professional engineer to refute what was originally approved by the engineer of record on this project. So our recommendation is to deny. This loop would be permanent, in my opinion. It wouldn't make sense to loop up in Anamosa Street, but that's probably a discussion for another day.
Thank you, that helps a bunch. One other question that I had, and maybe this is a moot question for Mr. Tech, is that if we did design this so that it was a dead-end line up there, we would have to flush that water line.
The flushing isn't necessarily the problem. There will be enough usage on the line where the water will stay fresh, but it's a redundancy issue. So if there is an issue, say someone starts excavating up there without a permit or a 911 or an 811 call before you dig and damages the water main, you shut off a dead-end water main, everyone is out of water. If you have a loop, and that same damage occurs, you can isolate a portion of that water main where you keep most of the people in water instead of everyone being out of water. That's the purpose for the looping.
Thank you. I yield.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak? Mr. Evans. Oh, you just went in. I didn't notice you. Sorry.
Well, again, my question is, when are we going to change the way we do things in this town so we stop having these problems where we're always delaying the solution that's inevitable till another time and forcing somebody else to correct it? You've been on the council for what, like 50 years or something, and yet there's never, these problems have been happening all of this time and we've never changed it. I think it's time that we change the model for how development is done in this town so developers don't have this constantly coming back to haunt them. And I think we need to somehow have a study or a committee formed or something to change the design process for the way this town is built so that all of this onus is not always on the developers to make it right, but for the city to create it in the righteous form, and then they can buy into it or not. And I think it's time we do that. So I don't know if anybody else feels like this, but I think it's time to do this. So thank you.
It scares me how much we agree on things, Bill, but we do. So if the committee doesn't mind, I'm just used to asking permission. I would like to ask a few questions too. Mr. Trelaw, can I ask you a couple of questions? So have you seen the fire flows up there? What is your professional opinion on the fire flows?
Sure, just to quickly respond, we did get the fire flow. We ordered fresh tests in June. We did have a registered engineer in South Dakota evaluate what those fire flows were at the end of those lines to make sure that we had adequate fire flow. So that was included with the exception package, the calculations for that and whatnot, and showed that we had adequate fire flow at the end of this line. The only other item that I think that I'd like to bring up is that, let's see, I think I can do this. This is a this is the topographic map of just this area here. We've got Elkvale located here on the west side. The road and the water main extension that we're talking about is right here, and then DeGee Street, the other side of it is over here approximately. The loop that we're talking about runs from here to here. You can see our elevation lines here and what we're serving. This contour here, this level equal elevation, if I run this over, I have an area that is lower along Anamosa Street, which would come straight through here per the major street plan. In other words, this area here, or these lots that we had shown on that master plan, they would be best served with that low water system that we're talking about. So when I'm talking about extending this loop, there's value in us running it, and then also there's a connection, a future planned connection on this low level that'll come across to Anamosa. And probably the most robust system would be to connect this over and through, and then there's areas further to the east as you travel in this direction that can also benefit from this. So the loop through Anamosa Street, at least in what we're looking at, seems to make sense, especially in lieu of something that's going to run down the back of a property line, as you're going to have access and whatnot to get to it. Where if we extend it in the future and run it along Anamosa, it potentially serves additional properties that can be served with this water main. And it helps to loop the water main coming in from Anamosa Street and running to the east.
Thank you, Mr. Talor. Can I ask Chief Billings a question? Good afternoon, Chief.
Good afternoon.
Have you seen these fire flows, and what is the fires department's position?
I have, and when my staff ran these flows back in June, or whatever the date was here for that, it indicated, at least at that spot in time, at that location, we had flows that served our needs for the present time. And as Mr. Tech identified, our flows are a snapshot in time and may not reflect exactly what the design or future, or the model, actually, city model represents, but
I don't have a lot of your models scare me sometimes. I've seen actual flows that differ from what your models show.
For example, it shows that we have the way we calculated it, it comes out that we have about 3,400 GPM available to us at that location at 20 psi residual, which is the pressure that it's calculated down to in most cases. That doesn't take into effect anything, or in regard anything to do with velocity, pipe velocity, which is how fast the water is moving in the pipe, nor does it show us what other parts of the system that may impact if we were to draw that volume of water off of it.
So since June, we'll just do this in layman's terms. Since June, what has changed?
I don't believe anything's changed in that regard. So a little bit, there may be one additional building on that particular location. I think Neal Street potentially has another apartment building on it, but.
Okay, and so your opinion, are the fire flows there now?
For what we have currently in the expected development there, it would meet the needs just based on the raw data, it would meet the needs for the expected development to occur, which is probably going to be another apartment building or two in that location, which would require about 1,500 to 1,750 gallons per minute available to us. So, because they are fire sprinkler protected, which reduces our requirements.
No, absolutely, and they should be.
As they should be, yes, exactly.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. Mr. Nordstrom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could I ask Kyle to come back up again, please?
Absolutely.
Kyle, excuse me for getting confused on all the red lines that you were drawing up there, but could you go back to the original map that you had up there with the proposed dead-end line?
The master plan or the?
Yeah, I think that's what you were drawing on, was the master plan.
Okay.
The last one?
We'll see.
Yeah, if you could just show me where you're proposing to put in the water line and where it dead ends at.
So what we've got proposed right now is to extend the water main about 200, ooh, my hand's getting in the way, about 200 feet here and here to plat lots right here.
Right.
Rather than run the water line on the back of these lot lines here, what we're proposing is that instead this loop would come and be built through Anamosa Street, and then when this street is extended, this next 150 feet, the water main would run up to Anamosa, and then it would create the loop back and around that then helps to serve and provide water pressure and ties into the overall loop that will be created with the continued extension of Anamosa to the east and west.
Kyle, aren't these on two different pressure lines? So if you're coming off of the west one from Anamosa, from the west, isn't that a whole totally different line?
We have
pressure
in Anamosa Street, everything that you see to the west, all the way back and around to Menards, we run two water mains. We run a high pressure and a low pressure. The one serves one side of the street, the other one serves the other side of the street. So north, south, high, low pressures. Here, you know, you branch off and there's future booster stations, future tanks, there's additional infrastructure, lots of future infrastructure that goes into this area to, you know, eventually create a higher pressure zone and tie into a higher pressure zone that's going to serve, you know, much of the top of this hill. We're working within the lower pressure zone right now that you know, like Dale is saying, we're right at the boundary. It zigzags back and forth through here as you go up and down this hill and through the drainages. Depending on where you're at, you land on the high or the low side. So having that redundancy there helps to complete the loop on that low pressure. It also helps to tie into all the development to the south eventually as well.
Thank you, Cal. I believe that helps me out. Anything else you want to add?
No, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Stroman, you have the floor.
Thank you. May I ask another question of Mr. Tech?
Absolutely.
Dale, when I read the agenda item summary, it looks to me like the exception to allow a public water main was approved by Public Works on January 30th, and the construction plans were subsequently approved, and then on July 28th, the developer's engineer submitted an exception request to not loop the water main and allow the dead ends, and Public Works denied that exception on August 13th. So what happened between the time that the Public Works approved the construction plans and then the developer's engineer submitted an exception request to what was approved?
I don't know that that's a question for me, but certainly the project was approved with the construction of this water main loop. As I said, the engineer of record, who I believe worked at KTM at the time, identified that looping was necessary and this was the best option to do it. Some time elapsed after that, and I'm assuming they just, from what I'm hearing them say, is they don't want to build it now, they want to wait to Anamosa Street. From an engineering perspective, we have not received enough technical information signed by a registered professional engineer to contradict what the original registered professional engineer submitted and was approved. If this committee is so inclined to approve the exception and allow for future looping, I would suggest that the property owner enter into an agreement today guaranteeing that that future loop will be built and on what time frame, because this could be a thing that goes on forever and never gets built. As I understand, the location, both vertical and horizontal, of Anamosa Street is unknown at this time. So future consideration will need to be given to build a future loop. Once again, that's unknown. I would caution this committee against recommending approval of this exception.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, you have the floor now.
And thank you. My question also relates to what Mr. Roberts says. I'm curious as to why things seem to be being built out of sequence. If this entire project was contingent upon that main going in to loop into in the first place, why are we building something that requires that before that part is built? And that's what's confusing to me. So if somebody would like to answer that, I'm certainly willing to hear the answer. Thank you.
Mr. Nordstrom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'm going to move along with the motion to uphold the denial. And then if I get a second, I'll retain the floor. It's just upholding staff's recommendation to deny. That's the motion. Yes.
We have a motion and a second, and did you want to keep the floor, Richie?
For a moment, if I may, Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm going to be looking for some more education on this whole process, but unlikely that I'm going to change my mind on this, but I need some more information. What I prefer to see is the redundancy on this, and the argument for having that built into the system makes sense at today's time frame, because as Mr. Evans points out, this could turn into another legacy issue, and this develops or creates additional problems for down the road or in the future. And I agree with Mr. Strommen's comments about the summary, that it just made everything more confusing for me, because at one hand we've got one opinion and then it changed, but we still don't have the professional opinion. You have a different name for it, Mr. Tech. The professional of record is what we don't have, and that's what I'd like to get. Thank you. Yield.
Thank you very much. And if you give me 1 second, I think I can explain to you, Mr. Evans, a little bit of why they're not hooking into the line up above there, which would be Anamosa, because the build-out on Anamosa should come from the west to the east. And there's roughly, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, 8 property owners between there and your property, 6 to 8 property owners. And the cost of that build-out on Anamosa is roughly $25 million. So that's the reason that it doesn't get done. When somebody's doing a small project, of maybe, between the 4 lots, who knows, you're not going to put Anamosa Street in from Elk Vale going to the east if you can't service it, if you can't get water, and high and low pressure water, and you're not going to get that water until it comes in from the west. I understand. So, and this is a project that should be done, in my opinion, by a TIF, and I've said that for a long time. If we would open up Anamosa Street, it would open up so much development in that area, and in Rapid City, it would be amazing. But that's just my opinion. So anyway, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Nordstrom to uphold the staff's denial, and we have a second from Mr. Stroman, and we will go to a roll call vote unless Laura has something to add.
I'm good, thank you. We can go to vote.
Okay.
Evans? Stroman? Roberts?
No.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Nordstrom?
Aye.
Motion passes with 1 no.
Thank you very much. We can discuss this more Monday night. That's why I voted no on both of them. So anyway, if I can get a motion to adjourn?
Motion made.
Have a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Thank you. It was a great meeting.
Aye.